Welcome back to the Big Red Hunters podcast. I want to start out by saying thank you to our sponsors, Big Frig Coolers. They offer coolers, cattle coolers that hold medication and vaccinations, tumblers, growlers, and dry boxes. The coolest thing about Big Frig is you can customize it all with whatever you want. Check them out at bigfrig.com, and if you have any questions, email at info@bigfrig.
Our next one is Glory Visuals. They specialize in wedding and commercial films, so they do videography, and it's incredible. Y'all should go check them out on social media. You also can check them out on gloryvisuals.com.
Next up, Other Guys Outfitters. They specialize in dry field and Canada goose hunts. They run from November through February, and they've done an awesome video of dive bomb industry, so you check it out. If you want to book a hunt, call Krager at 308-637-7777 or check the Other Guys Outfitters on Facebook and Instagram.
Next up is Faithful Images.
Ooh.
This is our personal photography business. You can check us out on Instagram or Facebook at Faithful Images Nebraska, or our website, faithfulimages.org.
Next up, Redbeard's Custom Calls. He runs the Timber Rattler or the Cut Down Duck Call and Crossing Guard Goose Call. Awesome calls, awesome quality. This guy's he knows what he's doing. So give Andrew a call at 712-898-6989 and let him know we sent you, because he'll give you 10% off.
Yeah, buddy. All right, next one is Chaco Peru, owned by Angelo. He specializes in big game and waterfowl hunts in the U.S., Mexico, South America, Europe, and Australia. So you can check him out at chacoperu.com or contact him at 469-999-4043.
Last one up, and a new sponsor to the podcast, Whitetail Taxidermy in Louisville, Nebraska. Owned by Jody Schultz. You might know him as Pappy from our YouTube. Awesome guy, and he's an award-winning taxidermist. So give him a call at 402-630-0031.
With that being said, those are our BRH podcast sponsors. We appreciate each and every one of them, and let's jump into the episode.
Three, two, one. Welcome back to another episode of the Big Red Hunters podcast. Today we've got Jeremy with us again. Go ahead and shout your stuff out there, Jeremy.
Just like last time, still Huntfish 365. We do Instagram and we do YouTube. We have been away for a little while, but I think in June 1st we're going to come back to all that. So,
oh boy.
Yeah, be on the lookout for that. Got a few ideas, a few changes coming. So
Few changes coming.
Yeah, just doing things a little differently, nothing major, but
oh, you guys better hear that. Better check out Instagram. You don't want to miss that. The other thing you don't want to miss is him coming back and shooting a cow elk in Wyoming.
Yeah, hopefully. Tough tag that I apparently got that I did not know was going to be tough, but hey, it's just part of the adventure.
Yeah, right.
That poor Game and Parks lady, she was nicely saying that I was I was dumb for pulling that tag, but all I said to her was, hey, I'm up for the adventure.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, it's Wyoming, so it's going to be gorgeous, which is awesome. But
we've driven through the unit. It's the lowlands of Yellowstone. I mean, it's a nice unit.
Yeah,
it's really pretty, but apparently a tough tag, and I did not know that. So
hey, that's all right. Yeah, we've been busy on our end. We've gotten some stuff planted. I think we got our dove field planted. Jared, Dane, and I, and then we've got our eggs for our pheasants. So I've kind of talked about it in the past, but we're going to be releasing pheasants into a field, trying to get a population started. And we've got CRP set up. We planted millet for them to, for food, and then we've got a pond down at the bottom. So we got about 100 acres. The only thing I'm worried about is coyotes.
Hey, if you want some help shooting some coyotes,
yeah,
I'll come help you.
I keep telling them we need to go here soon, but Oh, well, everybody's busy, so.
Spring and summer is such a hard time to kill coyotes, too.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're hard to see, in my opinion.
it's the seeing, and they don't react to anything. Your best months are January through the beginning of March.
Yeah.
Which sucks because you just missed it, but.
Oh, wow. I've just been lazy at doing, like, just work gets so busy in this time frame. Like we talked about, the flexibility with work. Right now is my crazy time because I deal with contractors, but it's nice because it lightens up a little bit during the winter time. So you just gotta, you know, a little give and take.
It's a whole different game when you really start to manage a piece of property.
Yeah, but I think I don't know if I've talked to you about this, but the same place that we snow goose hunted is we're going to be, or I bought into that club to be also duck hunt. So I plan on I've got that other private spot. I'll get the public spots, and then I plan on hunting that one too. So
there you go. Just
another available spot.
Hey, in this state, the more spots you have.
For real. Well, like last year we talked about it. Well, you had a lot better luck than I did. I struggled through like the later early season. I would say like especially late October or like early November. And so out there they did really well because nowhere else had water. They can pump water in and then they've got a drain too, so they can figure out how much water they want in that area. So yeah. It's nice. So I think they're going to be planting some duck food in there. I'm not sure what all they're planting, but just another spot.
There you go.
So another spot to make some eggs and bacon. So I'm really looking forward to that. So tying into early season duck hunting, today's episode we're going to be talking about the 3 duck limit. So there's now a 2-tier system here in Nebraska, and I guess they're approving it for South Dakota as well. Yeah. So the 2 tiers, they got the regular tier, so they've got, you got all the species set. So like here in Nebraska, we've got a 6 duck limit. We think we got 5 mallards with 2 hens. And then you can get the bonus duck. Basically everything's set in stone. And then now they're coming up with a new opportunity for their mission is to get new hunters in. The second opportunity is to, at beginning of the season, you have to buy in to the second tier on your license that you can shoot 3 of any duck, and from my understanding, 3 of any duck and either sexes.
Yeah, here I'm looking at it right now. Second category or tier 2, 3 duck limit with no species or sex restrictions.
Yep. So basically what they're saying is you can shoot 3 hen pintails if you would want.
Now, the one part that you did say, I didn't know you had to buy into that idea at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, so you're stuck in it as soon as you buy in. You select it when you're buying your license for the season, and you're already in. I guess my question is, and I'm curious, is that I already bought my license for this year because as soon as January hit, I bought my license for goose season and snow goose season. So
I have all that stuff too.
I'm honestly kind of curious how that works. But if anybody knows out there, shoot us a message because I'm kind of curious. I'm assuming that I would think you could change it, but you never know. Because I feel like they would have to have it set in the system before season started because that would cause a lot of confusion.
Personally, I think it's really, this whole idea is for the rain basin.
Yeah.
Because it's like the seasons start so much earlier, beginning of October versus out west.
Yeah.
You're looking earliest last weekend in October.
Yeah.
And like the birds are so much more confusing on this side of the state in the beginning of October versus the other side of the state, end of October. I mean, so I wonder if they're really just focusing on those people, and our season ends right before the end of the year as it is. So a lot of those people don't buy new tags.
I think the person that I would think of the most in this situation that probably would be helpful too is my buddy Greg. Greg's the guy I took hunting for the first time last year. He plans on hunting with me again. I think that it would help him in this scenario. I mean, I have a hard time, to be honest. We'll get there at the end, but I have a hard time believing that's going to bring in new hunters. But I think the new hunters that are interested, I think it gives them a little bit more of flexibility. For Greg, I mean, we were hunting with him last year, and that day that we were sitting there, and I thought they were pintails. They're actually mallards. You were like, no, they're mallards. And I was like, okay. I was just being, because there's certain marshes that have a lot of pintails. So when you get a new hunter with you get kind of nervous, like trying to keep them safe and keep them from doing something wrong. But a guy like him, I think this would probably be good for him because he, like you kind of said, a lot of times ducks are pretty brown that era, or you think a wood duck, they're hard to tell from a male from a female in that time period. Pintails, they are kind of hard. I mean, they don't really have any sprigs. They don't have a lot of color yet, depending on. It depends on them, but
on top of that, in early season, how many times have you had a flock of 10 or 12 birds come in, but it's like 6 different species?
Yeah.
I mean, I've had that plenty of times. I've shot spoonies out of a group of mallards before. Like,
my favorite.
Yeah, like there was one time we were hunting in the Rain Basin, and we had like 20. This was like first weekend in November. We had like 25 mallards land on just sheet ice.
Yep.
About 5 minutes before shooting light, I whiffed all 3 times on the mallards, and this hen spoonie is just floating. I threw a 4th shell in, and that's the one that I hit. Oh, dude, that was a frustrating day.
Let her rip. Yeah. Man, how many hunts have been saved by spoonies?
Oh,
like countless. For real.
I probably have a dozen videos on my channel alone where a spoonie has saved the entire hunt.
Or that's the other thing too, is like I've been on okay hunts, but like a solid flock of spoonies turned it from an okay hunt to like a really good hunt. Because they're just going to dump in, and you're going to get like 4 or 5 if you got decent shooters. But kind of back on the 2-tier system, just let's start out with the pros and cons. What's your opinion on pros for this?
Well, right now, my biggest pro for the whole situation, I was talking to my dad about this as we were talking about the podcast, is the recently new hunters. I mean, for instance, in my group, though some of these guys have been hunting with me for 3 or 4 years now, they still can't identify birds. And they will be, even during teal season, like birds will be dumping in, and I'll have to be like, okay, shoot them, because they're not good at identifying them. And I think with all these new hunters, because even though it doesn't seem like the number of hunters has gone up lately, I do believe we have a lot of new hunters, but we're losing some hunters. I think that's what's happening because of YouTube. People are getting a little interested in it, but they don't know how to identify birds. I think that's the big thing for me, is it gives these new hunters that may be doing it on their own, but can't identify them yet. It gives them an opportunity to go out there and have fun and not be worried about shooting too many pintails in particular in October in the Rain Basin.
I think that it can be helpful for a new hunter. I think it takes a lot of pressure off somebody like Greg that's going out there, and it's one thing. So say for Greg, if he was going to go out and he was going to hunt with me, it's not that big a deal because I'm going to call out birds and tell him. But if he ever took the opportunity to go out by himself and said, okay, I'm at least comfortable enough to know how to set a spread and know how to call, and I'm going to go out and do it on my own, it would give him a lot of leeway, flexibility, and he wouldn't be as worried. I think that would be very good for him. I think that'd be good for a lot of teenagers that are willing to go out on their own, at least try it. So, I mean, let's be honest, if you're 16 years old, you got to pick up, you're spending all this money to go out there, and you see a flock of pintails and you don't know they're pintails and you just let it rip because that's what you've seen on YouTube. There's a serious amount of problem in there because I think every bird so the second, say you rip out 2 or 3, so you shoot 3 pintails on accident. I mean, what is it, like $700 a bird or something?
It depends on the game warden you get. You get a state one, you might get a little bit of leeway, but I mean, you're still looking for pintails in particular. I bet it's nothing less than a $500 fine.
Yeah.
You get a federal game warden, they're gonna take you for every dollar you have, pretty much.
Well, I mean, they're doing their job. They're enforcing the law. It takes the headache out for those new hunters. I think that would be a super big benefit. Now, I think this is a good one that I've thought about, and I was thinking about this today, is thinking about my grandpa. I mean, he had hunted forever, but if you get a guy that doesn't have very good eyes, that is kind of losing his eyesight, I think that would be a good one for him. I think that it would help him to not be so worried about it. I mean, I feel like if I was that old and my eyesight was kind of going bad, I feel like I would still kind of see the whip of their wings and like some of that stuff, but I could see how that would be a benefit. If you're older, I could see that it'd be nice to go out and not have to worry about it. And I mean, if you're that old, more than likely you're not out there to kill that many birds anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
you're at the stage where you're just there to enjoy it.
So you rip out into a flock and ends up being a group of pintails you thought were mallards. That could cause a big problem.
Yeah.
So it's all hard to get off this topic, but I just think that pintails are probably the biggest one. I mean, there's lesser scab, but how often do you actually see those around here?
I've shot one. Like ever. But pintails, I didn't see any last year, but the other two that come to mind that I saw 2 years ago when we had a lot of water were redheads and canvasbacks, because their limit's only 2. I mean, it really does only affect those species that have a limit less than 3.
Yeah.
But the big one, especially in Nebraska, on the east side of the state in particular, is going to be the pintails. Those pintails in October, and that was something my dad was saying today while we were talking about. He's worried about pintail numbers dropping because of this whole idea, which I don't think will happen. How often do you actually get an entire group of pintails to circle down into the decoys?
Well, I think, to be real and honest, I don't, they've kind of proven this a few times, but I don't think with looking at the amount of Nebraska hunters and after the survey at the end of the year, how many like ducks are killed in Nebraska compared to like, say, Arkansas or Texas or California, I really don't think a few extra Nebraska hunters shooting 3 pintails would make that much of a difference.
No, I don't think it will.
I mean, if you wanted to, even one guy, that's all he did was target pintails. It wouldn't make that much of a difference to a whole species. I think habitat destruction, it is a much bigger issue than it would ever be on.
If you really want to worry about pintails and where they're at, we need to talk to Canada.
Yeah.
That is just a straight up reality about it. I mean, most pintails nest in Canada.
But
yeah.
This talking about duck hunter numbers that you brought up kind of earlier, and I want to jump back to that, is that so as a nationwide, the last figure that I saw was, as a nationwide, we saw about a 10 to 14% increase on hunters last year just because of Corona, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong. Super happy to hear about that. I think that is a great thing. But the hard part is the latest factor in Nebraska is around the nation, duck hunters have decreased by about 44% since 1990. On average, Nebraska has lost 464 duck hunters a year since 1990. So there's 30 years, 30 times. Let's go back. I'm going to do the math on this because this is a big deal, and I think so. 30 years times 464. So that's 13,920. So after spending $10 on the habitat stamp and what is it, 50 on the hunting stamp?
Habitat stamp is 25, and then the waterfowl stamp's 10.
Okay.
So 35.
So 35. And then you have your federal stamp. Let's just make it around $100. So per hunter, you're probably thinking $100 for.
Yeah, to get into waterfowl, I mean, you got your small game habitat. I think it's like $86.
Yeah.
So
we're just gonna make a round number, so it might be off a little bit, and that's oh well. So $1,392,000 in the 30 years that has been lost. So that would directly affect habitat management here in Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the biggest problem here is losing hunter numbers, and because you're losing hunter numbers, you're losing license holders. When you lose license holders, you lose money for conservation. That directly affects ducks. That affects the quality of hunting in Nebraska, and that's not good. And it's just a circling problem. And I think that's what they're trying to help. I think that, from my understanding, the survey probably went out and they asked a lot of people. And at least, I've heard a lot of flack about this, but at least they're trying. At least they're doing something to try to get new hunters in. I think it is a deterrent knowing that you could go out and shoot an extra pintail and there's $500 out of your pocket, especially for a young guy.
Yeah, well, I know when the survey came out, I had answered every single question. And when they were asking for comments on it, I literally went, there's so many new hunters that I think this is, at least for those people that can't identify birds, it's a positive.
Yeah.
I mean, is every person going to do it? No, because there's going to be plenty of people that are going to say, "Ooh, I can shoot 6 birds instead of 3."
Yeah.
Which I can understand why they're doing it the way they are, but when I first read about it and answered the survey, I thought it was going to be an either-or kind of situation, which would be hard to manage. So I'm glad they're doing it the way they are, even though it would be a commitment.
Yeah. So let's jump over from pros. Pros, I think we can agree on that it in some ways can help new hunters. What's the cons? Cons, we talked about the pintail deal. But overall, my biggest con about this is that I just have a hard time seeing it working, because I think a lot of new hunters are more or less going to do the 6 bird limit. Because if I was a new hunter and I just have to kill, because
most new hunters are trigger happy. That's usually the stage you're in when you first start.
Yeah.
My biggest con is that I don't know that the game wardens will be able to properly make the switch to understand that and to remember to check. I'll be interested to know how they are able to tell, whether it's just a different tag in general or what. I mean, I know you're buying all the same stuff, but will it be printed out different? Or I just worry about that.
Yeah.
Because especially in the Rain Basin, which is where I really think that this is going to take place a lot in the state of Nebraska. I've watched a game warden running around with like a chicken with his head cut off because he's trying to catch up with all of these hunters. I mean, some marshes you might have 8 groups in, and trying to check everything perfectly right.
So that's the other con is. So say, just put this in a speculation scenario. You're a 3-bird guy. I'm a 6-bird guy. You shoot 4 birds. What are you going to do? You're going to hand me that 4 one. And how is that guy? So say I shoot 2 pintails and you have a 3-bird limit. Why don't we just trade birds?
Yep. No, I have thought about that one too.
So you just, they're going to be a huge stickler on keeping your birds separate now, which is a good thing. You should do it. Everybody should have their own separate birds, but let's be honest, we've all been there. If you've hunted for a while, you get a good rain out, you throw them all in a boat together.
I mean, they're especially in the waterfowl world, party hunting just seems to be a thing.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't know what party hunting is, it's just where this is the amount of birds we can shoot today.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's right. I'm not going to say I haven't, nor if I have done that.
Yeah.
But that is certainly one of my fears with this whole situation. Because, I mean, even past that, if you have like 4 or 5 guys and 2 or 3 of them are 3 and you have just a massive flock of pintails come in, I mean, what's one of the birds everybody wants to shoot? Doesn't matter what state you're in.
Yep.
Whether you're in the Midwest, the East Coast, West Coast, everybody's like, ooh, pintails. I mean, when I look up in the sky and I see that white belly and that chocolate head of a Drake pintail, I'm like, oh my goodness, they're pintails, pintails, pintails. Like,
Yeah, right.
And I will work those birds for 20 minutes until they just either decide they don't want to do it or they want to come right in.
Yeah. Which it doesn't happen very often.
No.
So that's the other part of it is when they finally do come in, everybody's so trigger happy to get into them that next thing you know, you get a couple next to each other and you just knock a couple out on accident.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, and that whole aspect of them not always coming in, I believe you could go into another con, which is that this won't work. I think it'll die out, unfortunately, because everybody worries about their pintail limits. But again, when I was talking to my dad about this earlier, a couple years ago when it was two pintails, I only had one time that season where I shot 2 pintails.
Yeah.
And last season, I only had one day of the whole year where I wish I could have shot more than one because it would have been doable.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot of people that'll try it 1 year, go, I was only allowed to shoot 3 birds the entire season. Screw this. I'm not doing that again.
No, I agree. I think the other con of this is, and I think we talked about it beforehand, but like, unfortunately, because the way the regulations are set up, you can't shoot a wood duck during teal season because it counts as a big duck. So that would basically take away days at the end of the year. So we don't want to have wood ducks with teal season, but if this would account for both teal season and big duck season, and you could shoot the wood duck in the teal season, I think that'd be super helpful. I know that's not an option or opportunity, but we've all been in a marsh where we've seen wood ducks disappear.
Oh,
not by our hands.
Yeah. No.
But those things are, man, you have to, especially like early morning open day teal, man.
Oh, there was a kid last year in the marsh I was in. He got a ticket. He came in with 2 other teal.
Yeah.
Came in with a group of teal, and he smacked the one wood duck out of the group. And he got a ticket for that one.
Yep. And that's the hard part, you know. You get in, it's an honest mistake, but very, very costly honest mistake.
I kind of wish that they had done it more because I think the main focus is the new hunters.
Yeah.
I wish they had made it like, okay, if you want to get really into duck hunting, make it like a first year requirement. Like the first year you're buying permits and you've never, which would be hard with the non-resident aspect, but for residents in particular, if it's your first time ever duck hunting and it's the first time you've ever been recorded having tags, almost making it a requirement.
I think that would be a great idea.
Because those are the people that need the help. And yeah they want to go out and shoot ducks, but it's a not a safety thing, but it's a learning thing.
Yeah.
And then going forward with those people, you can make it an optional thing, which I would guarantee almost 100% of the time, unless you have a really conscious duck hunter, 100% of the time they're going to go to the 6 bird limit.
Yeah.
Unless they just really are not confident in themselves and being able to pick out birds.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to determine who the person is, but I think that I think it'd be a really good thing for the first year. I think that would be a great idea. That would be super helpful for a first year hunter, and it forces them to put themselves in a much more safe scenario. Because just think if you're 16, 18 years old, go out, accidentally shoot an extra redhead and $500, including all the money you've already spent into duck hunting, I think that would push people out of the sport and just make them mad. It's like, why am I even going to do this if it's going to cost this much? And then I make an honest mistake, and next thing you know, I get tapped on.
I had a couple buddies in high school that they didn't do they didn't shoot illegal birds, but during teal season they caught with birds that weren't properly clean. They had no wings, no identification on them.
Yeah.
And I mean, it cost everybody in that group because they had 2 days worth of limits, almost $1,000 a piece. And they were cut a pretty good deal. And one of the guys, to my knowledge, never went again. And my other buddy, he was, I mean, if you asked him about it today, he'd still be bitter.
Yeah.
I almost guarantee it.
Yeah. I could see that'd be a rough deal.
Getting a ticket, like, I mean, I've never had a ticket before, so I can't say anything to that. But for a new hunter, trying to learn something and then being punished while you're learning, that's a painful pill to swallow.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, man, $1,000 being 20 years old and not having money. Oh my gosh. Let's see. So I put up on our Instagram what everybody thought, or what's your thoughts. Old Matt from High Prairie Sportsman, he's like, can't wait to bag those 3 pintails a day. He said, honestly, it's, in my opinion, it's not a big deal, which I can understand why he thinks that. Maybe it should be 3 Gadwall for you, Matt. That's it. Matt from the Other Guys Outfitters, if you guys are looking for a guided hunt this year, shoot a DM to Matt. He'll get you all set up for next year. He said pintails for days, and then SS68601, old system for me all the way, but it's a cool option for some folks maybe. So I think everybody's in agreement where it's like, yeah, I can see how it's a good idea, but I just don't think it's going to play out.
I didn't even think about that, but talking about the other guys, imagine dealing with that as a guide.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
You just open up a whole new
That
bucket
is,
of worms.
I didn't even think about that.
You got to go down the line. Like, are you?
Yeah. What's your limit? What's your limit? And then, like, that's on you to make sure that they stay where they're supposed to be. And, wow.
There's not that many. I don't know that many early duck season guides around here at all.
No.
I can honestly say I don't really know of anybody.
I mean, even the other guys, they don't start till like the first week in November.
I think Matt's going to run a couple weeks into teal season, but I don't think he's doing early duck because he's going to take off for out west. But other than that, I don't know anybody. Like you said, I think this is really, it's guided towards the rainwater basin. I think that's the big one. That or the Missouri River, I guess. But that would be really tricky. So put this in perspective. You're hunting the Missouri, you're 3 duck limit on Nebraska side, but what's the limit on the Iowa side? How are you going to play that? Because depending on where you're at on the river, determines on.
You might be on the line.
Yeah.
If you're on the line.
3 pintails in Nebraska. Hey, I'm hunting Nebraska. I got the 3-bird license, but next thing you know, I'm in Iowa. Boom, boom. There comes a federal game warden.
You
got to be careful.
You wouldn't ever be able to prove it enough unless you had like quality video evidence that you were on the Nebraska side and then flip to the Iowa side.
You don't think they're going to give you any leeway.
But even then, I don't think they would give you enough leeway. It would go to court if you had that evidence. It would. Yeah. They'd still give you the ticket, and you would have to decide to fight it if you really wanted to.
You're paying $250 an hour for a lawyer at least.
Well, and I mean, not even just having more than what would be your pintail limit in Iowa. If you shoot your limit in Iowa, you got 9 ducks, and like you're gonna.
Yeah.
Wow.
Brain buster.
Oh my goodness.
That's just, being on the borders. Yeah.
I've always wondered about the border areas. It's part of the reason I just don't ever.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I've never really hunted on, say, 2 states at one day. So can you technically hunt Nebraska? And if you had the 3-bird limit, you could kill 3 birds and then circle back and hunt across the border in Kansas and shoot another 6? Is that how that works?
I believe if you have your birds properly marked, maybe, but honestly, I couldn't answer it.
Gotcha.
My recommendation to anyone would be just to not. I mean, that's
a heck of a day if you went out and shot one side and the other.
Man,
but
you'd be exhausted. But yeah, it would be one heck of a day. You'd have to have a really good morning hunt and then a really good evening hunt, which tell me a time of year where you're going to get both of those, and maybe you can convince me that you could do it.
yeah.
But
There's been a couple days of, like, it'd be hard to travel in between. So say if you were hunting the rainwater basin and then jump to Kansas, I think you would, if there's any place to do it, it'd either be the Missouri or it'd be there. But it'd be really hard. But I think that's a big gray area there, jumping, especially in Missouri. I think that'd be dangerous. I wouldn't do it. I'd be too nervous.
I just think anywhere that there is a gray area rule, you should just ignore it, and not in the sense of go for it, ignore it. You should just not do it. I mean, for instance, like the gray area rules with water in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Where the state owns the water, but not the land under the water. I mean,
yeah, I heard there was guys a couple of years ago when it flooded out, they would go on the Missouri, and then they would get onto people's fields, but they wouldn't set an anchor down.
Yeah. Which
I heard there's a lot of angry farmers about that, which, if you're, got some guy going down the road that doesn't have permission and they're shooting in the morning, I could see how they'd be really frustrated.
Well, and it's frustrating because I can almost guarantee all that was done is the game warden probably came by and said, hey, it's easier if you leave, because he probably didn't have enough, unless he knew that they were anchored up, to say, all right, I got to give you trespassing fees. You're getting everything here. But yeah,
yeah. There is a gray area there that I understand that. So say if you're shooting, technically your BBs are trespassing.
Well, and that's the same thing with, like, I had another buddy who dealt with an odd public-private situation with fishing. While ice fishing, ice is technically water, but as soon as you put your line through the hole and your weight hits the bottom, you're trespassing. Which just don't mess with gray area rules is all I can say.
I think we can both say that if you're in the gray area, you're going to get burned. Majority of the time, you're going to end up in the wrong spot, and they're going to get you.
I wouldn't even try it. Hopping states like that. I mean, the only thing I could say is if you had your birds really well marked, like you wrapped a nice little bow tie around them and had a piece of paper that said Nebraska.
Well, the first thing they're going to ask is,
how do I know?
Did you just change the tags on it?
Yeah.
Like, oh, hey, shot there's 4 pintails here, and they're 3 are marked Nebraska, one's Iowa, but how am I supposed to know?
Yeah.
So that would be
not worth it.
No, I wouldn't think so, but hey, everybody, to each their own.
Yeah.
So if anybody's got an opinion on that, shoot us a message, because I'm honestly curious what everybody's thoughts are on that, because that's a big question.
Yeah. I
ain't playing with it, because I like hunting rivers when they're shallow, kind of like the Platte and stuff, but
the Missouri is not something that I want to mess with.
If I knew somebody, and somebody's on the podcast listening, that hunts the Missouri, I would maybe go once or twice, like early season. So if I got dunked, I'd be okay. Just go about my business. But it's cold at all, I'm out, because I have no desire.
Yeah.
So I'd at least try it just for fun. But I don't have a lot of interest. But to kind of finish up, let's see, opinions. Do you think this will be successful on what they're going for and what they're shooting for?
Oh, man. Truthfully, no. I think it'll last. I don't even know that they'll let it fizzle out. I think they'll just pull it at some point.
It does say on the chart or whatever, it says that it's a 5-year pilot.
Is it 5? I thought it was 3, but I knew it was a pilot. I knew they were just going to try it and see what happened. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other states that are looking at it.
Yeah.
I would guess that Kansas, after about year 3, will be like, hey, they'll make their decision. Was this a good idea or a bad idea? Because Kansas is another one of those states that, especially northern Kansas, I'm sure they have a lot of the issues with new hunters that we do.
Yeah.
I think, again, it'll benefit new hunters, but I think one thing I can say is it might help people learn their birds faster because they'll want to go to that 6-bird limit.
Yeah.
But as much as I want it to work, I don't think it will. I really don't.
I think it depends on the people, and in my opinion, I think they should incentivize it. The way that I think that they should incentivize it is when you buy your licenses, I think you should get a discount. So say if you get a 25% discount on your hunting license, your waterfowl stamp, and your habitat stamp, that way it incentivizes you to do it.
Yeah.
I think that would be good. I just don't see a lot of incentive on this because as a new hunter, you want to kill more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're just trigger happy majority of the time. I'm not saying for everybody, but majority of the time you're just trigger happy. And so I think the 2 people that we're going to see the most do it is people that have good mentors. For guys that I know that are getting started, I will encourage them to do this because I think it's good for them just because it keeps them safer in that scenario. Because, I mean, yeah, I call out shots, but like you said, there's birds that are mixed in all the time. 2, and I think kids. So if you got a dad that talks to kids.
I think youth, like, again, going back to that whole requirement with new hunters, I almost think this should be a youth thing for sure.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe they'll move to that point at some point. Because, I mean, let's see, in Nebraska, you can start hunting at 11, I think.
I think so.
I think it's 11. And, yeah, that's 5 years until you're legally as a hunter, an adult, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But that's 5 years where you're only shooting 3 birds, and that's some good incentive to learn your birds. So I also agree with the incentive idea. I think especially if your bag limit is cut in half, I mean, you're not taking as much.
Yeah.
So I think it should be a discounted kind of situation.
I think the heart of this is to get people, give them safety, give them peace of mind, get new hunters in and give them peace of mind. I think that another part of this is it sets a tone for a realistic view on what a successful hunt looks like as well. And I'm going to say this opinion, and I might make some people mad, and that's fine. In my opinion, I think the Central Flyway should go to 4 birds. I think that it's getting the point, and I've heard this I think that several people have talked about this, but there's been so much pressure, and we've talked about that too. There's been so much pressure on these birds that I think cutting back on the amount of pressure by birds would be super helpful, you know, because everyone wants to see this big pile of ducks, but yet, you know,
I had never really ever thought about something like that. I would say that I don't agree for the overall limit, but I actually do think that mallards in particular should be going to either 4 or potentially even 3 at times.
Yeah.
Because that's what everybody wants to shoot, especially in the Central Flyway.
Yeah.
People come to shoot in the Central Flyway.
My thought process and with this is, and if people are going to ask why would I think that for a 4 bag limit would be better? Last year we had good habitat. I think we had good numbers. I think they were overpressured, so we got skipped here in Nebraska because of the lack of water in Nebraska. Mm-hmm. Now, I know guys that are in Kansas that did pretty well, but I don't know from my understanding, people in Oklahoma didn't do well. I don't know that anybody in Texas did that well. I think the ducks are way overpressured. And this year with the drought that's going on in South Dakota and North Dakota, I really don't think the hatch is going to be very good. And what you're seeing is habitat destruction in Canada and the prairie pothole. You're going to see a bad hatch. I think it's time to take a step because we don't want to become the Atlantic flyway, because they kept decreasing the numbers over time period, but they haven't been able to get ahead of the issue enough to now. I mean, they get to shoot like one mallard, I think. So if we can get ahead of the issue and keep the populations up, I think that would be a good thing. Now, people may disagree with me, but I would rather shoot 4 ducks and be happy.
Yeah.
And then knowing that I'm going to continue to have more quality hunts rather than, wanting to shoot this big limit pile.
Hearing from that aspect, I can, I'm not totally there with you, but I can agree, actually.
I mean, I don't want to give up 2 ducks.
Yeah.
But
I mean, and I think we should maybe, go to 4 mallards and 5 total. I mean, and the other thing is that I would say, and I would speak on this one, and it probably could be another podcast because it's a good conversation. I think Canada needs to change a lot about what they do. 8 birds is ridiculous to me. 4 pintails is ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
And I get it that everything is brown up there when they're hunting, in particular, but that's too many birds to me.
Yeah.
And I would say if the central flyway in particular was to cut back, I think Canada needs to cut back too.
Yeah.
And even the few birds that do make it to Mexico, I think Mexico's limit is 10.
It's, some ridiculous limit.
Which I know, you get the different country aspect of it, but I mean, we have Ducks Unlimited and Delta Waterfowl programs in both of these countries, and they work together with the United States. Canada is struggling with the whole agricultural effect on waterfowl. Why aren't they at least cutting back on their birds if they can't get that under control? I don't get that.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make an argument for us to keep our birds. I actually, hearing it from that aspect, I can agree with it, because you're right. We should be trying to fight to not be what the Atlantic flyway is right now.
Yep.
Because they have no answer. They can't even get it under control.
Well, it's their habitat destruction is happening at a much higher rate than ours, but you're going to continue to. It's hard because you're thinking it's like inflation. It's going to happen, whether you're willing to sit here. Obviously, you're going to try to fight it as much as you can, but it is going to happen. And if if you're willing to get out ahead of it or not. And the habitat destruction, and it continues to happen, and farming practicing changing, and not only North Dakota, South Dakota, and Canada. And so farming practices, and it's just going to continue to be what it is. And that's why pintails, they went to 1. I think that if they did a survey this year, I think next year would have been 2, because I think there is a lot of pintails.
I actually think that we never needed to go back to 1.
Yeah.
Because I see more pintails every year, it seems like.
Yeah.
Especially in Nebraska in October.
But I will say the bird that I'm curious about that I haven't seen, and maybe it's just a off and on kind of year, but I can't remember seeing a widgeon last year other than that one I shot that day. And I usually see a bunch.
I shot 3 or 4 myself, drakes, but I didn't see a whole lot of them. And actually, that's a whole other conversation. And I get that they're considered trash ducks, but why do we have a 6-bird limit on widgeon and gadwall? I don't know. That one I don't understand, because I will agree, when I first started hunting, widgeon is like all we shot the first 2 years I started hunting.
Yep. And
gadwall too. But now, I shot a lot of gadwall last year.
Yeah, I did too.
But you're right. The the year before this, last season, I didn't shoot a single widgeon, and I saw 2 flocks of widgeon and a couple singles that I didn't shoot.
Yeah.
But I hardly ever saw them. And last year, I saw a lot opening weekend. There was a lot of widgeon opening weekend. But,
I think they haven't done surveys for last year and this year. I think duck numbers are off. I really do. I think the duck numbers are, they said they had a good hatch last year, but how's the overall populations doing? And it's hard. I think there's 2 different things. I think pressure's a problem that keeps them more dormant and nocturnal, I guess I'd say. But I do think the duck numbers are off. I would agree with that. And I think there's a lot of people who have kind of said that.
I think they're off. It is hard to say whether they're on or off, since I 100% agree that we were a skip state this year.
Yeah.
I know that in October and November, Kansas was loaded.
Yep.
With mallards even. I mean, they jumped us fast. But I think it has a lot to do with water. Because I say that, and I go back to the season before.
Yep.
And there wasn't an inch of water, it felt like, that didn't have ducks on it.
Yep. No, I understand. I'm with you, and that's. I think it depends on year for us. I mean, the year before that was one of probably the warmest and wettest years we had in a long time, and so we had everybody I knew had a really good year.
Yeah, that was my best year ever.
And kind of circling back to the quality of hunt, kind of talking about ducks and all that stuff. My overall opinion about this, and it's hard because it's a double-edged sword, is you want new hunters in Nebraska. I hate to say this, but Nebraska Game Park's going to have to step up on, and I think this is a problem that the Nebraska hunters need to help them out on, because like we said, there's like $1.3 million they're missing out on right now because of the loss of hunters. But, I mean, I think quality of habitat is a big difference, because if you're, talking about these states we're talking around, South Dakota has a great amount of natural habitat. Kansas has a lot of great natural habitat, but they have a lot of great managed habitat.
Manage like crazy in that state.
You've got Missouri's got an amazing level of habitat management. I don't think from my understanding, there are some in Iowa, but I think they're just a huge flyway for both sides of the flyway, so they just do really well.
I've always heard that Iowa is kind of like that state that's like the flyways like avoid it essentially. Like, I don't know. Everyone I've
always known,
watched or talked to about Iowa says it's kind of poor.
Huh. I don't really have much of an idea of it. I know the eastern side of like on the Missouri does
on
decent.
The Missouri you can do,
and on the Mississippi is decent, but yeah, I guess I don't know that much about it, so I can't comment that much. North Dakota has a lot of natural habitat. I think Minnesota has a lot of great natural habitat. So you got a lot of states around here that have, good bases of hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Nebraska, it's a money deal. That's what it boils down to. And they do, I think they do a decent job for the amount of money they have, but I think they need to come up with ways for expenditures. Now, like Missouri, they have 0.5% of sales tax ends up going to the state conservation, and that's where they get their money from.
Well, yeah, this is how dumb Nebraska is. The state wants to tax the game in parks, which I think is ridiculous, instead of trying to help fund the game in parks. And I actually, I think, especially when it comes to waterfowl and wetlands, I think the state does a poor job. Like, I know it has to do money, but
here's an idea for you. Not saying this would ever happen, but this would be great. Talk about the Platte River. You would have to, I don't know, probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but up the property tax by 0.25% or allow, so this would be negotiating tactic, saying either you allow public hunting from bank to bank, so public hunting access, or if you guys don't want to do this, which you vote on, that's fine, but 0.25 property tax for the game parks. Game changer. That would fund a lot of money into the game parks.
Yeah, it would. Wow.
I know. I'm sorry, everybody there that's probably angry at me right now.
There are people that are cringing at that thought, but that's a really good idea. Actually, I'll be interested. I didn't read into it a whole lot, but I'll be interested to know if there's any form of kickbacks with the gambling.
Yeah.
Coming into the state.
It's probably end up going to the city instead of the state.
I know it's also supposed to help lower property taxes across the state.
Well, it kicks into property taxes, but a lot of the property tax ends up kicking into schools. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Lincoln just built 2 more schools.
Yeah, we spent a lot of money on those schools, too.
I think one's called Standing Bear. I think one's like Northwest, and then one Standing Bear. But then you roll over, and then SEC's always building something new, too. Southeast Community College. So I have a hard time believing that property taxes are going to go down because of the gambling thing.
Yeah.
It just ends up they using it for something more. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they manage to somehow, they said the wheel tax is going to help fix Lincoln roads. Well, we all saw how that works. I'm sorry, it's off topic, but I just don't understand why we cut out chunks of road, put more crap in there, and expect it to be fixed. It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Like, you put old concrete with new concrete, it just ends up breaking and fractioning it where they cut it at or where they cut it out. And then you just have to come through and resurface the whole thing again next year. What's the point? Or even better yet, Lincoln, Nebraska Roads Department. I'm sorry if you work for them, but why do you come around in a little trolley that spits out crap into potholes? By the end of the day, all the crap is out either on a vehicle or in the middle of the road. It's never in the pothole the whole day. Sorry. I'm not sorry. That is just ridiculous. But same idea. I think it ends up just not doing anything. I really don't. I think it just...
Which is poor. And I 100% agree with what you were saying, that I had thought about this year while I was driving around scouting for early teal season. I really think that we should, as waterfowl hunters in Nebraska, we should get almost a group that goes around and cleans up some of these marshes. I mean, even our Ducks Unlimited chapter, I feel like, doesn't do as good as they should in this state.
Yeah.
But,
dogs.
Yeah, dogs
have a little too much fun, I guess.
I would love to see if a bunch of waterfowl hunters in like June and July would just go around, because after all the water that we had the 2019-2020 season, all of these marshes are just chock full of weeds. Yeah. They are. There's no room. There's no room to put water in, even if they wanted to. And it just doesn't seem like the game and parks, and I get it, money, it doesn't seem like they can keep up with it or try to keep up with it.
So putting it in perspective, so I was at Branson, Missouri with some family, and we were sitting at this lodge, and at the lodge they had a hot tub and then a pool. So we're sitting there, and there's a little girl, and my wife has a magnet for any kid at all. Mm-hmm. She will be a great mother. We'll see how me being a dad. But we'll get there when we get there. But she came over. We got to talking with a lady, and she works for Missouri Conservation. Okay. And we started talking, and I said, I'm a waterfowl hunter. She's like, oh, yeah, I do a lot of the stuff for management and all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, cool. So I started asking her questions and talking to her about it. And she's like, yeah, we go to these conventions, basically, with all the states. They kind of do all the recommendations for, anything from bag limits, that kind of stuff, like habitat management. That's more or less a conference to get together and talk what they're all doing and how their, numbers are and that stuff. She's like, yeah, every time we meet up with a conference like Nebraska, they basically just sit there and say that like they don't have any money for anything and that they're worried about getting fired because they don't have enough money for staff. And like, that's a grain of salt kind of thing. You kind of take that as a grain of salt, but if you see the way, and not to be mean, but some of the stuff is managed in Nebraska, if there's not enough money to fund something, there's only so much you could do.
Yeah.
It's like giving somebody $10 and saying build a house.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really fault that person for not doing a very good job if they don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
So that's something, and if somebody's out there in Nebraska, listening, I think that is, if you really want to help this state, you really want new hunters and everything, and like I do, I think it's time to start thinking about what we can do financially.
Mm-hmm.
Now
financially, volunteer programs.
Now there is a couple ideas I have rolling around my head, but
I can tell you one that's going in my head right now.
What's that?
Quit trying to make walleye work on the eastern side of this state. It will never work. The Game and Parks dumps so much money into trying to make walleye work on this side of the state.
Walleye and trout.
Yeah, trout not as much on this side of the state.
Usually interstate lakes.
But I
know. We don't have deep enough lakes. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, and it's too muddy.
By the time they dump them, they either die or they get eaten by something else, or they get fished so hard they're done.
Yeah, there are some, if you fish really hard, and there are some lakes that do well, but give up on it. They've been trying to get this to go for like 20 years to have regularly, and I know that there's going to be people that are screaming at me right now if you're a fisherman in the state of Nebraska. In the state of Nebraska, but on the east side of the state, it is not going to work. Not the way they want it to.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
I agree. I've got I've got a couple ideas in my head. You know what? Why not? Let's roll with it. So here was my thought. Bigger hunters, we'd go out there, we'd find a sporting shooting place, right? Mm-hmm. I would have someone to come out with the grill, make food. We'd have everybody shoot, a couple rounds on a sporting clays or trap or something for dinner, all that. Get a few companies together and give some giveaways and do all that stuff and charge, $100, $150 per person, and then kids for free. Mm-hmm. That way, all the money that ends up coming out of the profit on that, just kicking it back to the state and say, hey, this is for waterfowl management. Mm-hmm. Use it. Use it how you see fit. I think that would be a good thing. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of people, but I've certainly thought about doing that. But
I think we talked about that when we were hunting last season.
Yeah,
that idea.
And I've been kicking around a lot. I think Corona kind of put a stop to that idea, especially. But I've got so much stuff going on in my life. I know that's a bad excuse, but
yeah,
no, I think that's we raise money for Delta Waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited, which is awesome, not taking away from that. But if you're putting it, say, into a context of like cow waterfowl, what can we do as Nebraska waterfowlers to help our state? What, instead of complaining about it, what are we doing to making our grass greener here?
Mm-hmm. I think because of especially in Nebraska, because of the money situation, it's going to come down to volunteering.
Yeah.
Which I know takes a lot of time, but man, if you just took, if you made a schedule, got a bunch of people signed up, and you, especially in the Rain Basin in particular, which is the area I think about this, there's so many small marshes.
Yeah.
If you just, for even one day a weekend between the months of June and August, went around and just cleaned up a marsh, one marsh a weekend.
Yeah.
You're going to make a lot of huntable areas. Whether they pump it or not is the big question. But
I think it'd be hard because it would probably depend on water rights, and that kind of is dependent on each year and how much water we get, because the state, I mean, farmers tend to start complaining when the state's pumping water out on public areas when they can't even get it for their farm, which if I was a farmer, I'd get it. So, but, well, any final thoughts before we jump off?
Final thoughts is we have about 4 different other podcasts we can talk about right now, but
well, I think that's the truth. But all right, guys, I appreciate you guys watching it or listening to this. If there's a way to give back, Delta Waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited is awesome. I think if you're like us, I think the next day or two, you're going to start thinking about what you can do to help out Nebraska. We did say some criticism about Nebraska, but I think Nebraska is an awesome waterfowl state. I think that, I think this 3-bird limit is a good thing. I don't know how well it's going to take off, but, I hope it does the best, and I hope it does achieve. I hope there's new hunters. That's what Big Red Hunter stands for, and that's what we want. So hopefully that's what happens. So, like I said again, we appreciate you so much for listening to this podcast, and have a good night.